having some technical difficulties.
That's true.
Nothing at all?
Doesn't appear to be. Oh, well.
Maybe?
Here we are, all right. Good evening. Welcome to the January 20th Board of Education meeting for Skokie School District 68. Those of you attempting to watch from home will notice that there is no video feed. We apologize. Last minute technical difficulties have reduced us to an audio only presentation. So we apologize that you can't look at our masked faces. We will do a roll call so that you know we are all present and attentive.
Bell Jordan. Here. Espinoza. Here. Joseph.
Here.
Ruthner.
Here.
Sturbins.
Here.
Sullivan. Here. Warshaw.
Thank you. We will now open our meeting for public comment. I don't believe we have any registered. Did we have any submitted online?
We did not.
And we shall move right ahead to superintendent's reports.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've had quite a few weeks coming back from winter break, and my return from winter break update is perhaps longer than my recent updates have been. We'll start with our COVID infection and quarantine data. During our first week back, we tested almost every single child and adult in the district and had almost 180 cases, which was approximately, more than 10% of our, well, with staff and students, it was about 10% of the total number. So, we had some, we believe what we had there was a lot of accumulated cases that were unidentified over winter break when people couldn't access testing. Once we got that first wave of students identified and quarantined and tested again, the rate started to go down. As of today, I believe the last time I looked, we had about 54 positive cases, which is about 3% of our student body, down from about 11% of the total student body, in our first week back. Our student absence rates were at a high of about 21% absent as a district average during parts of our first week back. That was a combination of COVID identification, a combination of people being absent for other illness reasons. And we also know that there were some families that chose to keep their kids home during that first week and some into the next week as well. As of today, our absence rate total is about 6%. And about 3% of our total are COVID-related absences. So about half of our student absences are COVID, the other half are non-COVID. So, that's other illnesses, and if there's any remaining parents that decide to keep their kids home still. So things are improving dramatically with regards to those absence rates. Staff was a real sticking point during that first week. At one point, we had about 19 out of 300 staff members who were COVID positive. One or two had COVID family situations that they couldn't attend for. We came close a few times to wondering whether we were going to be able to sustain if we had many more staff members test positive at the same time. Fortunately, we were able to get through that. We canceled all of our PD. We basically deployed any able-bodied licensed staff member to cover classrooms so that we were able to get through without having to close down classrooms and to close school. We had a feeling if we could get through that first week or two and offer the benefit of testing to all of our families, because we know that over winter break, families did not have access to testing. And we thought probably the best thing we could do to help out would be to get everybody back at school and test everybody universally and get instant results back and start to sort of control the situation in that way. In the process of all that, new quarantine guidelines came out as well, which also helped. It changed the quarantine period for COVID positive to 5 days if you don't continue to have symptoms You could come back after 5 days. The exception there that is impacting us right now is preschool. Preschool is still 10 days, and it's a combination of factors that's led the health departments to strongly recommend that. One being that our preschoolers, there's only 5, 6 of them who are able to produce enough saliva to participate in shield testing, so we don't have a good testing method at the moment. We're exploring an alternative, which I'll tell you more about in a moment. Our preschoolers are a little less regular with being able to keep their masks on and noses covered. They also have a little bit of a harder time with the social distancing, and none of them are vaccinated because you have to be 5+ for vaccination. So for those reasons, when we have a COVID positive case in preschool, pretty much everybody in that classroom is considered a close contact, just because of the amount of interaction with kids. And it's hard to keep 3- and 4-year-olds in a little bubble off to themselves, seated by themselves in a preschool environment. So we have had to close down or go remote, maybe that's a better way to say it, on our preschool classes a number of times. One class has been impacted 4 times now. We're besides ourselves with consternation about that. But given what the parameters are we're working with, we don't have a real good viable alternative developed yet at this point. We have checked with preschool programs in the township and surrounding districts, and everybody is following the same guidelines that we are. And in fact, there's some preschool programs in some surrounding districts that are just sending packets home. We are making the attempt to go remote and provide remote instruction to the extent the preschoolers are able to participate with that. But there's some obvious and understandable frustration with that amongst parents. There is with us as well. Something we're going to continue to work on. We did, Annie Warshaw, who's not with us this evening, had told me that in one of her children's preschool programs, they had a mouse swab test that they were using. Had not heard about that. I asked her for contact information with the company. She was able to get it for me. I passed it on to the Skokie Health Department. They had not heard of it either. So I'm waiting to hear back their verdict on whether that's a viable alternative. Part of it probably depends upon whether it's really a mouse swab in your cheek or whether it's going down your throat. Because if it's going down your throat with preschoolers, that can be very problematic. In the same way that sticking the swab up the nose could be as well. So again, we're seeking some alternatives that might allow us some more flexibility with preschool, but at the moment we're not quite there yet. Shield testing prior to winter break. We were testing at each building once a week, and then we were contact tracing, doing the testing for contact tracing on days 1, 3, 5, and 7 for anybody who was a close contact with somebody who was positive. Because of the numbers we identified when we came back, contact tracing became an impossibility with the numbers of kids and staff members identified. So we went to the health department and Shield's alternative method to contact tracing, to the test to stay, which is you test everybody twice a week. Instead of doing that 1, 3, 5, 7 and trying to keep up with, we would have had to have hired additional staff to be able to contact trace the 180 something people who had COVID in that first week. So we started doing the twice a week testing. That's a temporary measure that we had to get the recommendation from the health department, which they readily supplied for us. So Shield has done that. We're going to see if we can extend that twice a week testing for the foreseeable future, if possible, because we have found it to be a very effective method. Because what we have found is that almost all of our COVID cases are contracted outside of school. So if we're just testing the contact traced kids and staff members, and there's a whole week of, between testing, we have kids getting it outside who are coming in more often. So by doing it twice a week, we feel like we're actually identifying, we're more on top of identifying kids and getting kids and staff to quarantine in a timely manner. So Apart from that, just takes a lot of extra time, which, you know, is sort of the big story about everything COVID related this year is the amount of time and attention that our administrators, our teachers, and our students have had to divert to, you know, some of the mitigation efforts. You know, we feel like it's well worth it to be here in person versus remote, but again, it is taxing on the system and our ability to do things we might normally be doing if the conditions were different. Air quality testing, we continue to randomly test our classroom spaces for carbon monoxide, using that as an indicator of air circulation. If the carbon monoxide content's high, it means, you know, there's a lot of people breathing and the air is not being circulated around quickly enough. So we do random spot testing there, and all of our spaces continue to test in the safe ranges.
It's carbon dioxide.
Dioxide, thank you. Yes, monoxide.
We
Thank
have
you.
carbon
Yeah.
monoxide. It's a bigger problem.
It's the mask.
Just clarifying for the audience.
No, it's the mask. I said it right, but the mask. And then we have scheduled another round of student vaccination clinics next Friday. That is Parent-Teacher Conference Day. Kids will be off that day, so parents can bring their kids into Old Orchard to get first-time vaccinations or booster shots if they're 12 plus and they've already gone through their 2 shots and the appropriate amount of time has passed. And staff members will be able to come and get boosters as well. And then 3 weeks later, on February 18th and 19th, are the second round of shots for anybody who's a first-timer or anybody who's eligible and ready for boosters at that time as well.
Can I ask a quick question about that?
Yes.
Are those clinics also open to others that are not part of 68's community? Like if there's someone who's got an older sibling who's at Mouse North but would like to be able to take advantage of that, are they able to come to Old Orchard as well and get a?
We would not turn them away.
Okay.
We're not doing broad advertising because we want to make sure we cover our you know, internal our students and staff first. But in past clinics, especially the Saturday one in particular, sometimes we have vaccinated some other family members who've come along, and if the clinic said they had the vaccines, we ultimately that's the decider on whether they have the vaccines to be able to do it. Booster updates for staff. Recently, the rule used to be that you had to wait 6 months from your second vaccination before you were eligible for boosters. We also recently got new guidance on booster eligibility. See if I can remember this all correctly. If you got the Pfizer as your first and second shot, then you had 6 months to get 5 months before you got the booster for Pfizer. Yes. Moderna, if that was your first one, it would last 6 months until time for your booster. And then, disappointingly, J&J, two months is what they're saying before you need a booster. And they are saying not the J&J, but your booster should be Pfizer or Moderna, except in some unusual circumstances outlined on the CDC website. So if you'll recall, the board's resolution for mandating vaccination included boosters. So we've started to communicate out the new parameters. Have provided staff with multiple opportunities for boosters already, plus the ones coming up, and we started collecting vaccination cards for boosters as well to be able to keep up with the board's mandate on vaccination. Lastly, I'll say that, and I don't think I can really say enough in this count. During those first couple weeks back, it was hairy. It was super stressful for administrators, for teachers. I know parents, were anxious, kids were anxious. Our staff was amazing in this district. When I went out to buildings, I was halfway, afraid that I was going to confront a lot of angry people out there. And I had so many staff members and teachers come up and thank me for staying open. They wanted to be here despite the anxiety and fears and worries. They wanted to be here for the kids, and they wanted to stay open for the kids. Some school districts did have to go remote because staff were not showing up, whether they had COVID or whether they had other illnesses. And you know, I have to hand it to our staff. I think unless people could not drag themselves in, they were here and they were working to support our students. And, you know, thanks to our wonderful administrative team, it wasn't all hands on deck a couple of weeks. You know, we had several administrators have to be out for some period of time as well. And we had, you know, half a dozen people from this building going out and helping out and trying to fill in during those couple of weeks. And I have not heard a complaint from an administrator or a teacher or an aide or a bus driver. They have been phenomenal. So, any of you out there listening, thank you very much. That concludes my return from winter break report at this time, unless there's any questions.
Well, thank you. We know decisions were not made lightly, and got a lot of guidance and a lot of opinions. And, thank you for navigating us through all of it.
I could not have done it without the incredible District 68 staff team. Then I believe our next report is the student growth update, led by none other than Dr. Samadeh.
So we wanted to provide you some information about student growth, since we were not really able to provide that information earlier in the year because we didn't have growth data from last school year. So I have some MAP growth for you in math and in reading. So this chart shows the percentage of students at the district, across the districts, and then at each grade level who met their individual fall to winter projected growth. So you can see where as a district, 63% of students making their individual growth compared to our 2019 administration of fall and winter assessment. So we're about where we were in 2019, and each grade level is pretty much consistent, with the exception of fourth grade has a little bit of a drop, and first grade, this being the first time that they had taken the assessment. Just as a note, NWEA recognizes that across all students who take MAP testing, 50 to 60% of students make growth projections, and so that's that's a typical percentage of students who make those individual growths, so we certainly want to be at that or above. So this is how we performed in math. And then this is the same information but broken down by our subgroups, so free and reduced lunch, our English learners, students in special education, and then all students as a whole. So again, comparing 2019 to this year. And then in reading, same two charts. So in reading, we have a little bit of a difference here in the percentage of students making growth compared to 2019. We do have almost all grade levels that are below that 50% goal that we want to hit. So we have some growth to make there. I don't know if you remember from the student achievement report that we gave in October. Our IRA data and our MAP proficiency showed that reading was a strength compared to math, and so to see the opposite with growth is interesting. I have a couple of thoughts about why that might be the case. Kindergarten through fifth grade, we have new curriculum that teachers are implementing. Really, this year is the first year. Professional development in best practices and using the reading workshop model started last year, but again, PD through COVID is a little bit different and not as intense and as thorough as we would like. There's always an implementation dip when you implement a new curriculum or new strategies. We have the same occurring at our junior high, not with materials, but with professional development and using that workshop approach. So I suspect that as our teachers gain traction with these methodologies and become more comfortable with the strategies and the curriculum, that we'll see some better growth as we look towards spring. Here is the chart showing you the subgroups. Again, kind of a little lower in 2021, but looking across the gaps that occur, they're not terribly wide. So building principals and school leadership teams are working to analyze the data, have discussions in PLC meetings, talk about strategies, looking at individual students and their projected growth. Our MTSS specialists also have their hand in that conversation and thinking about how to support teachers in differentiating instruction and seeing a little bit more movement with growth for reading and for math for our kids. Any questions?
I'd say a quick comment. I know this is something at the high school we looked at too, and one of the topics we saw due to COVID was, I think there was an article in the American Federation of Teachers talking about how the increased amount of screen time, how that's directly correlated and affected the literacy skills of students. So when you think about being in a district where we were almost in a legitimate 12-month of straight remote, the amount of literacy skills at those foundational levels definitely had an impact that we were seeing even at the high school level. So that is something that is, to me, that's a big factor of the more you're at your screen, the less likely you're going to open the book versus the other way around. So it is one of those things that we're living in those times. So yeah.
I always appreciate a refresher because I'm not sure I can easily articulate, NWEA's assertion about the 50 to 60% of students that they expect to meet or exceed. Can you remind us how they derive that particular percentage? And again, in this mode, I know everything is kind of thrown off, but typically they derive that expected percentage each year based on longitudinal, based on sampling.
Yeah, they conduct norm studies every 3 to 4 years or so, and so based on the 10 to 15 million students that are part of the norm study, they're able to determine those growth projections, as well as what the average or the mean RIT score is for students, and how much they should grow based on their starting RIT, but also based on their grade level. So all of that comes from those norm studies, which are regularly updated. The newest one is 2020.
And so our data are 19 to 21.
Mm-hmm.
Their norming data is 19 to 21, or do they include in the norming data 20, even though 20 is really an anomaly? Does that question make sense? Their norming data is their norming data from 2019 to 2021, even though we're doing a specific comparison between 19 and 21 because we didn't have consistent exams or testing for students. Am I talking off here? I'm trying to formulate my question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they I don't know exactly how long they spend on a norm study, but I would imagine it would be at least one school year. So the 2020 norm data was used to determine these growth projections for this school year. The 2019 data that I shared with you was based probably on the 2017 or 2018 norm study. So different norm studies, but for our purposes, we didn't show last year 2020 data because we did not assess we tried to assess in the fall and that it worked well, and then we did not assess in the winter, so we had no growth data to show.
I guess I'm just trying to, put into perspective what the NWEA norm means to us, right? In the context of the fact that And we're really looking at 19 to 21. Just for my own kind of thinking about it, it's a piece of information.
Yeah, it really just is our way of comparing how are we performing compared to the tens of millions of students across the country, and what is typical. And in math we're a little above typical, and reading we're a little below.
Thank you. And, the final report.
I do not have any additional superintendent reports.
Wonderful. 3C will be stricken from the record. All right, we shall move to the reading and acceptance of
Wow.
minutes. That's going to be nothing to the audience. I call for a motion to approve the minutes from the December 16th, 2021 Board of Education regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Espinoza,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
Ruffner,
Yes.
Sturvant,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we move to the approval of consent agenda. The consent agenda is our next item of business. Does any member wish to remove any item for separate consideration? Then I call for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, which includes the personnel report authorizing the resignation of administrative staff, the resignation, leave of absence, and retirement of licensed staff, the hire, resignation, and retirement of classified staff, financial reports, pay orders, and expenditures, the second reading on board policies 220, 2110, 2260, 350, 360, 4165, and 5120, and the destruction of the closed session audio recording from June 18th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Joseph,
Yes.
Ruffner,
Yes.
Sturvant,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Espinoza. Yes. Thank you.
We move to our reports and discussion items. Ms. Espinoza.
Yeah, it was a very, very quick meeting. I just have a few things to share. The strategic planning was supposed to take place actually this weekend coming up. It has been postponed. They really would like to hold it in person, and now is not the best time to have a lot of people in a small gym in person. So I'm kind of looking at maybe the end of February or March to kind of pick that up. So still planning, but just pushed out a little bit. Their numbers were pretty similar the first week or so coming back. About 23% of staff and 25% of students were out the first week. They have just opened up a brand new classroom. They've had 19 students join NTSE since the start of the school year. So, which is for them huge. Like they've never had this many join since the beginning of the school year. So they have a whole brand new classroom up and running now, which is really great. And then next year students will be starting. Staff will start with meetings right before, but students will be starting right after Labor Day, and that's due to the construction that is currently underway. It's looking good over there. They're getting some things up. So and they're shortening winter break by 2 days to kind of allot for some of that starting late time, so they can still get out towards the same amount of time.
And then
And
the
that's it.
NTDSE classrooms that we host,
Yes.
they'll start on our schedule on the.
Yes, I'm sorry. That's for the Malloy.
Yeah.
That's for the students at Malloy. I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. But that was it. It was a 30-minute quick
Sweet.
in and out meeting.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We move on to the draft of the regular meeting calendar for 22-23.
Okay, so part of Illinois School Code is that in the January board meeting every year that we share and discuss a proposed draft board meeting calendar for regular board meetings for the next year. So here they are. They fall on the third Thursday pattern still at 7 o'clock every month. This year, we didn't have to make any modifications for holidays, religious holidays that sometimes, move and fall on some of these dates. Nor did we need to move the January meeting back like we had to this year, to accommodate enough time to prepare that meeting. So in all cases here, it's third Thursday, 7 o'clock for next year. And then in April, you will be asked to formally approve this calendar. Any questions? Okay, we'll bring it back in April for formal approval. Yeah.
And first reading of policy 340.
So we have one policy, 340, this time. Its title is superintendent. And this is actually a very minor change. It doesn't actually change anything that we're already doing. They added the line when talking about duties and authority, where they're talking about required reports and notifications. They added the line saying, including the special reporting responsibilities in policy 590, abused and neglected child reporting. We also made a gender pronoun change here to align with our practices, and that's about it. So we already had those special reporting responsibilities before. They're just memorializing it here in the list of duties. So it's not a change of practice as much as it's a change of words in this policy.
Thank you very much. Yes. Any questions, comments? Okay. We move on to our action items. I call for a motion to approve the 2022-23 school calendar as presented.
Second.
So this is the same calendar we brought to you last month that we discussed. There was no suggested modifications to be made to it, so it's the same one that we talked about last month. You want me to go over all the days off or anything?
think
or you're good?
We made the change.
Not needed.
Okay, there you go.
We made the change to one, was it the Monday, the 26th,
Yes.
right?
Wonderful.
Ruffner,
Yes.
Sturban,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Espinoza,
Yes.
Joseph.
Yes.
Thank you.
And moving on to communication and information, there were 3 requests and/or responses for information under the Freedom of Information Act during the period December 11th through January 14th. On January 7th, 2022, the district received a request from Helen Oliver of Quadient requesting lease information on the district's mail machine. The response was sent on January 10th, 2022. On January 10th, the district received a commercial request from Zoe Yelson of Smart Procure requesting purchase order and vendor information. That response was sent on January 18th. And on January 11th, the district received a commercial request from Jonathan Fagg of WLS TV requesting information on the district's remote learning equipment. The response was sent on January 18th, 2022. If there is no further business to come before the board, I call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Sturban,
Oh, I
Sullivan,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Espinoza,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
Ruffner.
Making it as short as NTDSE, yes.
I know.
I was kind of hoping to start next this abstain.
Yes.
I just can't make up my mind on this. I brought a phone book, you're all gonna listen.
Still live?
We're still a little bit live. It's all good. It's a healthy conversation. We haven't seen each other in a minute. Back that car.
Don't even have to, my card is
Oh, that's what we say.
Yeah.
I know in the past, yes, yes. In the past, obviously kids have taken out their Zoom this year, so. And it sounds like.
I'm not talking about it. But I'm gonna file.
That it's gonna be set up with Zooms in there, so
Somebody do that work.
the kids will, okay.
I would like
You can
Brian
send it.
Barry.
And then part of me was like, is going to be like really like.
That'd be nice if you could make FOIA requests that include who you want to fill it. I would like Ryan to let me know how many picks there are, sound,
I'm curious, how I'd be very happy to let you know.
Yeah.
I just wonder,
I'm sorry.
how long would it take to walk the meeting?
Yeah, right.
To walk the district, the day when the turkey.
It's quicker than on a hot day.
Okay.
I know, I don't.
My heart swelled a tiny bit when I called that. I was so hoping that you either. Okay.
So, be there.